Captain Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of the ESS Defiant, watching the gleaming ships of the Galactic Concordat's enforcement fleet surround her vessel. Their sleek hulls shimmered with energy shields, a stark contrast to the Defiant's battle-scarred armor plating. The diplomatic channel crackled to life again. "Captain Chen, this is your final warning. The ESS Defiant has been declared non-compliant with Concordat regulations. You have 1 hour to begin decommissioning procedures, or we will be forced to take action." Sarah smiled, though there was no humor in it. The Concordat, with all its advanced technology and supposedly enlightened civilization, still hadn't learned that threats rarely worked on humans. She turned to her first officer, Marcus Rivera, who stood quietly at her side. "Status report. All systems nominal, Captain," Marcus replied, his dark eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Hull integrity at 98%. Railguns charged and ready. Point defense grid online. Nuclear fusion drive running at optimal efficiency." He paused, then added with a slight grin, "All our illegal and primitive systems are functioning perfectly." The bridge crew chuckled. They'd heard the Concordat's complaints countless times. Their ship was an abomination, a relic of humanity's barbaric past. The Defiant's arsenal of kinetic weapons, its thick armor plating, and chemical propulsion systems had all been banned by the Concordat centuries ago. Modern warships relied on energy shields, plasma weapons, and gravitic drives, all clean, efficient, and approved by the Concordat's Technology Regulation Board. Sarah walked to the command chair, her boots clicking against the metal deck. No gravity plating here. The Defiant created artificial gravity the old-fashioned way, through rotation. Another violation of Concordat standards. "Open a channel to the enforcement fleet," she ordered. The communications officer, Lieutenant Helen Park, nodded and pressed several physical buttons. No neural interfaces on the Defiant. "This is Captain Chen," Sarah announced, keeping her voice level. "I've reviewed your demands, and I have a counter-proposal. The ESS Defiant will submit to inspection and potential decommissioning under one condition. You prove your approved technologies are superior to ours." There was a long pause. Finally, the enforcement fleet's commander responded, his translated voice carrying a note of confusion. "Captain, this is not a negotiation. The Concordat's regulations exist for the good of all species. Your Arctic weapons and defensive systems are dangerous relics of a more violent age. Then you should have no problem defeating them in a combat exercise," Sarah replied. "One ship against one ship, training weapons only. If you win, we'll comply with decommissioning. If we win, the Defiant gets a special dispensation to continue operating." The bridge fell silent as they waited for a response. Sarah could almost imagine the enforcement commander's internal struggle. The Concordat's representatives had absolute faith in their approved technologies, but they also had an almost religious aversion to violence, even simulated. "Your proposal is rejected, Captain Chen. You have 53 minutes remaining to begin decommissioning." Sarah nodded to herself. She hadn't expected them to accept, but she'd needed to try diplomacy first. That was one of the many lessons humans had learned over centuries of space exploration. Always give peace a chance, but be ready for war. "Helm, plot a course through their formation," she ordered. "Engineering, prepare for emergency acceleration. Weapons, power up point defense systems only. I don't want to hurt them. Just show them why they shouldn't underestimate primitive technology." The crew acknowledged their orders with crisp efficiency. They'd drilled for this scenario countless times. The Defiant might be considered obsolete by Concordat standards, but her crew was anything but. "Captain," Marcus said quietly, "even if we get past the enforcement fleet, we'll be branded as outlaws. No Concordat world will give us sanctuary." Sarah's expression hardened. "The Concordat doesn't own the galaxy, Marcus. There are plenty of independent colonies and free ports that remember why humanity kept these technologies. They know that relying entirely on energy shields and gravitic drives is asking for trouble." She stood and faced her crew, seeing the determination in their eyes. They'd all chosen to serve on the Defiant, knowing it might come to this. The Concordat thinks they've evolved beyond the need for physical weapons and armor. They believe their energy shields make them invulnerable. But humanity learned long ago that the universe is too unpredictable to put all your trust in a single type of technology. The tactical display showed the enforcement fleet moving to surround them completely. Their energy weapons would be powered up, ready to disable the Defiant systems with precise plasma bursts that would pass right through physical armor. All hands, battle stations, Sarah commanded. Let's show the Concordat why humans never completely abandoned the old ways. Helm, on my mark. Execute escape plan Delta. Engineering, give me everything the fusion drive has. The Defiant's engines hummed louder as power built in their cores. The enforcement fleet's ships drew closer, their energy shields creating beautiful patterns of light that rippled across their hulls. They're charging weapons, Marcus reported. Energy signatures consistent with standard Concordat plasma cannons. Sarah allowed herself another smile. Exactly what we expected. Helm. Mark. The Defiant's fusion drive roared to life, pushing the ship forward with acceleration that would have crushed the crew if not for their chemical reaction compensation systems, another technology the Concordat considered too crude to use. The enforcement fleet's sensors, calibrated for the subtle gravitational distortions of modern drives, struggled to track the Defiant's ballistic course. They're firing, Marcus announced, but Sarah was already watching the plasma bolts pass harmlessly through the space where the Defiant had been a second before. The enforcement fleet's targeting systems were designed to predict the movement of ships using gravitic drives, not the pure Newtonian physics of chemical propulsion. The Defiant shot through the enforcement fleet's formation like a bullet through tissue paper. By the time they adjusted their sensors and weapons, Sarah's ship was already accelerating past their effective range. All ships in pursuit, Helen reported from communications. They're demanding our surrender and threatening to fire on our engines. Let them try, Sarah replied. Their plasma weapons were designed to disable energy shields and gravitic systems. Against our armor plating, they'll barely raise the temperature. She turned to Marcus. Plot a course to New Darwin. The colonies out there still appreciate the value of keeping some old-fashioned weapons in their arsenal. As the Defiant raced away from Concordat space, Sarah thought about the message they'd just sent. The enforcement fleet would report their escape, and the Concordat would undoubtedly brand them as dangerous rebels clinging to barbaric technology. But maybe, just maybe, some of them would start wondering why humans had never fully embraced the Concordat's approved weapons and defenses. Sometimes, Sarah reflected, the old ways weren't just tradition. They were survival. The universe was vast and full of surprises, and limiting yourself to a single approach to technology was asking for trouble. The Concordat would learn that lesson eventually. She just hoped it wouldn't take a catastrophe to teach them. Jump coordinates locked in, Marcus reported. Ready to leave Concordat space. Take us out, Sarah ordered. The Defiant's fusion drive pulsed, pushing them toward freedom and an uncertain future. Whatever came next, they would face it the human way, with steel, grit, and the determination to never let anyone tell them there was only one right way to solve a problem. 3 weeks after their escape from Concordat space, the Defiant's crew was settling into their new routine at New Darwin Station. The independent colony had welcomed them with open arms, understanding all too well why some ships chose to maintain older technology alongside modern innovations. Sarah stood in the station's observation deck, watching civilian ships come and go, when Marcus rushed in, his face grave. "Captain, you need to see this." He handed her a data tablet. Multiple distress calls from the Concordat border sectors. Something big is happening. Sarah scanned the incoming reports, her expression darkening. Dozens of colonial outposts had gone silent. Concordat patrol ships were reporting encounters with unknown vessels that ignored all attempts at communication. But it was the combat footage that made her blood run cold. The recording showed a Concordat heavy cruiser, one of their most advanced warships, facing off against a vessel of unfamiliar design. The alien ship was dark and angular, its hull seemingly absorbing light rather than reflecting it. The Concordat cruiser opened fire with its state-of-the-art plasma cannons, only to watch in horror as the energy weapons passed through the alien vessel without effect. "They're shields," Sarah muttered. "They're using some kind of phase technology. The Concordat's energy weapons can't touch them." The footage continued. The alien ship's response was devastating. It fired what appeared to be streams of exotic particles, bypassing the Concordat cruiser's energy shields completely. The proud warship, built to Concordat specifications with no physical armor, was torn apart in seconds. "How many ships have we lost?" Sarah asked. 23 Concordat warships confirmed destroyed," Marcus replied. "Dozens more missing. The alien fleet is advancing steadily into Concordat space. Their weapons, it's like they were specifically designed to counter Concordat technology." Sarah's mind raced. The Concordat had spent centuries standardizing their military technology, ensuring all member species used the same approved weapons and defenses. It had seemed logical at the time, a way to prevent arms races and ensure technological parity. But now that very standardization had become a critical weakness. "Get me a secure channel to Admiral Zhang at New Darwin Command," she ordered, "and tell Helen to start monitoring all Concordat emergency frequencies." Minutes later, Admiral Zhang's hologram appeared in the station's secure briefing room. The old spacer's face was lined with concern. "I assume you've seen the reports, Captain Chen." "Yes, sir. Request permission to take the Defiant to assist." Zhang raised an eyebrow. "The same Concordat that tried to force you to decommission your ship 3 weeks ago. They branded you outlaws." "With respect, sir, that won't matter much if these aliens overrun Concordat space. New Darwin will be next." Sarah leaned forward. "Besides, I think we might be able to help. The Defiant's weapons and defenses don't rely on the same principles as Concordat technology." The Admiral was quiet for a long moment, studying tactical displays showing the alien advance. "You think your primitive weapons might be effective where their advanced technology has failed?" "There's one way to find out," Sarah replied. "A railgun round moving at relativistic speeds doesn't care about phase shields, and our armor plating might give us a chance to survive their particle weapons." Zhang nodded slowly. "I'm getting reports that the Concordat Defense Council is in chaos. Their entire strategic doctrine was based on the superiority of their approved technology. They never planned for an enemy that could simply ignore it. The universe is too vast to assume any single approach to technology will work against everything," Sarah said, repeating the philosophy that had guided her career. "Humanity learned that lesson the hard way. Maybe it's time we taught it to the Concordat." "You realize this is likely a one-way mission," Zhang warned. "Even if your weapons are effective, you'll be massively outnumbered." Sarah smiled grimly. "The Defiant was built to handle bad odds, sir. And we might not be alone out there. There are other independent colonies and free traders who maintain older technology. If we can prove it's effective against these aliens." "I understand." John's hologram flickered as he consulted another display. "Very well, Captain Chen. I'm authorizing the Defiant to investigate and engage the alien threat. I'm also sending messages to other independent colonies and ships. If your weapons prove effective, we'll need every non-standard vessel we can get." "Thank you, sir." Sarah turned to leave, but Zhang's voice stopped her. "Sarah," his tone was softer now, "your father would be proud. He always said the Concordat standardization would come back to haunt them someday." Sarah nodded, remembering her father's stories of the early days of human space exploration, before the Concordat's influence had spread so far. He also said that humanity's greatest strength was our ability to learn from the past without being bound by it. Back on the Defiance bridge, Sarah watched her crew prepare for departure. They had all seen the combat footage, all understood the stakes. Humanity had never fully trusted the Concordat's vision of technological progress, maintaining older systems alongside the new. Now that diversity might be the galaxy's best hope for survival. All stations report ready, Marcus announced. Engineering says the fusion drive is running hot and clean. Weapons reports all railgun capacitors charged and ammunition stores full. Very well. Sarah settled into her command chair, feeling the familiar embrace of its manual controls. No neural interfaces, no AI assistance, just human skill and determination. Helm, take us out. Set course for the Concordat border. Let's show these aliens that humanity never forgot how to fight the old-fashioned way. As the Defiant accelerated away from New Darwin, Sarah thought about the message they'd received from the Concordat Defense Council just minutes earlier. For the first time in centuries, the mighty Concordat was asking for help from ships they had branded as primitive and dangerous. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of irony after all. The Defiant dropped out of FTL on the edge of the Arcturus system, sensors immediately scanning for signs of the alien fleet. 3 Concordat colonies had gone silent here in the past 12 hours. The system's defense fleet, consisting of 6 advanced Concordat warships, had disappeared without a trace. Contact, Marcus called out, his voice tense. 3 alien vessels, bearing 040. They're pursuing a civilian transport. Sarah leaned forward in her command chair. Show me. The tactical display revealed a familiar sight. The dark, angular ships they'd seen in the combat footage. They were closing in on a Concordat transport, its energy shields flaring uselessly against their particle beam weapons. Open a channel to the transport, Sarah ordered. Tell them to cut power to their shields and engines. All that energy is just making them a bigger target. Seconds later, Helen confirmed the transport had complied. The civilian ship went dark, dropping into a ballistic trajectory. The alien vessels, seemingly confused by the target's sudden change in signature, slowed their pursuit. Now they're our problem, Sarah said grimly. Helm, attack course. Engineering, give me everything the fusion drive has. Weapons, prepare for simultaneous alpha strike on all 3 targets. The Defiant's engines roared to life, pushing the ship toward the alien vessels at accelerations that would have killed an unprotected crew. But the ship's chemical reaction compensators, technology the Concordat had dismissed as crude and dangerous, kept them functioning. Aliens are responding, Marcus reported. They're turning to engage. Their weapons are charging. Let them fire first, Sarah ordered. I want to see how our armor holds up. The alien particle beams lashed out, designed to bypass energy shields and tear through the delicate internal systems of Concordat ships. But when they struck the Defiant's layered armor plating, something different happened. Hull temperature rising, engineering reported over the comm. Outer layer ablating as designed. No penetration. Armor integrity holding at 92%. Sarah allowed herself a tight smile. Just as we thought. Their weapons are optimized for penetrating energy shields. Against good old-fashioned metal armor, they're just fancy heat rays. Weapons, you have solutions. Aye, Captain. All 3 targets locked. Railguns 1 through 4 ready. Fire. The Defiant shuddered as 4 electromagnetically accelerated projectiles launched from her spinal weapons array. Each round, made of depleted uranium and tungsten carbide, was traveling at a significant fraction of light speed. The aliens' phase technology, so effective against energy weapons, meant nothing against solid projectiles moving at relativistic velocities. The results were devastating. The first alien ship was struck amidships, the kinetic round punching through its hull like tissue paper. The second took a hit to its drive section, the impact converting kinetic energy to heat and light in a brilliant explosion. The third managed to evade 2 rounds, but caught the 4th in its bow, spinning the vessel out of control. Direct hits on all targets, Marcus announced, unable to keep the satisfaction from his voice. 2 confirmed kills, 1 disabled. Get me a tight beam to that disabled ship, Sarah ordered. Let's see if they're more interested in talking now. But before they could establish communication, the damaged alien vessel self-destructed in a flash of exotic energy. Sarah frowned. These aliens were clearly willing to die rather than be captured. "Captain," Helen called out, "we're receiving multiple distress calls. The aliens are hitting the Concordat colony on Arcturus Prime." Sarah studied the tactical display. The colony was home to over 2 million sentients, most of them species that had fully embraced the Concordat's technology restrictions. Their defenses would be useless against the alien weapons. "How many hostile ships in orbit?" "7 confirmed signatures," Marcus replied. "Standard attack pattern, similar to what we just encountered." Sarah nodded. "Send a message to the colony. Tell them to power down their shield grid and energy weapons. All that radiation is just making them easier to target." She turned to her weapons officer. "How many rounds do we have left?" 16 kinetic penetrators, Captain, plus point defense ammunition. "It'll have to be enough." Sarah opened the ship-wide comm. "All hands, this is the captain. We're about to engage superior forces to defend a Concordat colony. The same Concordat that tried to force us to abandon our primitive technology. But today we're going to show them why humanity never put all its eggs in one technological basket." Battle stations. The Defiant's crew moved with practiced efficiency, preparing for what could be their final battle. But there was no hesitation, no doubt in their movements. They had trained for this, had maintained these obsolete systems precisely because they knew the day might come when energy weapons and shields weren't enough. "Message from the colony," Helen reported. They're asking how they can help." Sarah smiled. "Tell them to dust off any projectile weapons they have in their museums. Today, we're teaching the galaxy why humanity kept the old ways alive." The Defiant accelerated toward Arcturus Prime, her engines pushing her toward another confrontation with an enemy that had thought itself invulnerable to primitive weapons. But as humanity had learned long ago, sometimes the old solutions were the best solutions. Sometimes victory didn't require the most advanced technology. It just required the right technology for the job. And today, humanity's stubborn refusal to abandon its technological heritage might just save the galaxy. The hangar bay of Arcturus Prime's Central Defense Station was packed with an unlikely mix of species. Concordat military officers stood alongside independent colony captains, all watching as Sarah Chen demonstrated the manual targeting systems that had proven so effective against the alien ships. "The key is to forget everything you know about energy weapon tracking," Sarah explained, adjusting the mechanical sight. "These systems don't predict where the target will be based on gravitic distortions. They calculate pure Newtonian physics, velocity, mass, and momentum." A Concordat commander, his ceremonial robes looking out of place among the practical uniforms, raised a tentacle. "But surely you're targeting computers." "No computers," Sarah interrupted. "The aliens can hack quantum systems and corrupt AI targeting solutions. These are mechanical rangefinders backed up by human judgment. Sometimes the old ways are the most reliable ways." The success of the Defiant's defense of Arcturus Prime had sent shockwaves through the Concordat. 7 alien ships destroyed, a colony saved, and all accomplished with technology that had been dismissed as obsolete centuries ago. Now ships from across the sector were arriving to learn these primitive techniques. Marcus entered the hangar, making his way through the crowd to Sarah's side. "Latest reports from the frontier," he said quietly. 3 more independent colonies successfully repelled alien attacks using modified kinetic weapons. The new Darwin shipyards are working around the clock to produce railgun systems. Sarah nodded, pleased but not surprised. Independent colonies had always maintained a more diverse technological base than Concordat worlds. They were adapting quickly to the new threat. "What about the Concordat response?" Marcus smiled slightly. "The Technology Regulation Board is in emergency session. They're discussing temporary exemptions to the weapons restrictions. Apparently, being faced with extinction has a way of changing political positions." Sarah turned back to her audience, noting how the Concordat officers were handling the solid metal training rounds with a mixture of disgust and fascination. "These projectiles are simple," she continued. No electronic components to fail, no energy signatures to detect. Just mass and velocity. Against an enemy that can phase through energy shields, sometimes simple is better. The demonstration continued through the station's night cycle. Sarah and her crew taught targeting techniques, armor maintenance, and manual backup systems to officers who had never touched physical controls in their lives. Some adapted quickly, their natural survival instinct overcoming centuries of technological prejudice. Others struggled, too dependent on AI assistance and neural interfaces. Captain Chen, a young Concordat officer, approached her after the session. "I've been studying the combat footage from your engagements. Your ship's maneuvers, they're completely different from standard doctrine." "Because we're not using standard technology," Sarah explained. "Gravitic drives are precise and efficient, but they're predictable. Chemical thrust gives us acceleration patterns the aliens haven't adapted to. It's not elegant, but it works." "Like throwing rocks instead of firing lasers," the officer mused. "Exactly. Sometimes the simplest solution is the best solution." Later, in the station's command center, Sarah met with Admiral Zhang and the sector's Concordat leadership. Tactical displays showed the alien fleet's movements, but now there were green markers indicating successful defenses. "The independent colonies are coordinating their responses," Zhang reported. "Every ship with kinetic weapons or physical armor is being pressed into service. But it's not enough. We need the Concordat's industrial capacity." The Concordat High Commissioner, a tall crystalline being, spoke with characteristic precision. "The Technology Regulation Board has authorized limited production of historical weapon systems. However, retraining our crews will take time we may not have." "Then we'll give you that time," Sarah declared. She manipulated the tactical display, highlighting defensive positions. "The independent ships will hold the line while you convert your production facilities. But understand this. When this crisis is over, there can be no return to technological orthodoxy. The galaxy is too vast, too unpredictable, to rely on a single approach to warfare." The High Commissioner's crystalline form refracted light, and what Sarah had learned was a sign of agreement. Perhaps there is wisdom in maintaining diversity. Not just in biology, but in technology as well. "Humanity never forgot that lesson," Sarah said. "It's why we kept these primitive weapons operational, even when the Concordat tried to force us to abandon them. We remembered that sometimes the old ways are the best ways." The meeting continued late into the night, planning the defense of civilization itself. But now there was hope. Hope born from humanity's stubborn refusal to abandon its technological heritage. As Sarah returned to the Defiant, she found her crew already training the first group of Concordat engineers in the maintenance of fusion drives and railven systems. The sight of advanced alien species learning primitive human technology would have been amusing if the stakes weren't so high. "Never thought I'd see the day," Marcus commented, joining her on the observation deck. "The mighty Concordat learning to fight like humans." "They're learning more than that," Sarah replied. "They're learning that progress doesn't always mean abandoning the past. Sometimes it means remembering why certain solutions worked in the first place." Below them, in the station's massive construction base, workers were already modifying Concordat ships, stripping away energy shields to make room for armor plating, replacing plasma cannons with railguns. It wasn't pretty, wasn't elegant, but it would work. The aliens had expected to face standardized Concordat technology. Instead, they would face the combined ingenuity of a galaxy that had remembered the value of diversity, in weapons, in defenses, and in thinking. And it had all started because humanity never forgot how to fight the old way. The largest fleet in galactic history assembled at the edge of the Arcturus system. Sarah Chen stood on the Defiance Bridge, watching ships of every description move into formation. Concordat cruisers, their elegant hulls now bristling with railgun turrets. Independent colony vessels, their armor plates bearing the scars of previous battles. Even civilian ships converted to carry primitive but effective weapons. Final count, Marcus reported. 217 ships. 83 with full kinetic weapon conversions, the rest with hybrid systems. He paused. The alien fleet approaching the core worlds is 3 times that size. Sarah nodded. The enemy had gathered their forces for a final push toward the most populated systems in the galaxy. But this time, they wouldn't be facing standardized Concordat technology. All ships, this is Captain Chen, she broadcast to the fleet. The aliens expected to face a galaxy dependent on a single type of technology. Instead, they're about to face every weapon humanity ever invented, backed by the industrial might of the Concordat and the resourcefulness of the independent colonies. Today, we show them why diversity isn't just nature's strength. It's civilization's strength as well. The fleet moved into position, using tactics developed over weeks of brutal combat. Ships with physical armor formed the vanguard, while vessels still relying on energy shields maintained distance, ready to provide covering fire. It wasn't elegant, wasn't according to any doctrine, but it worked. Multiple FTL signatures, Helen announced. Alien fleet incoming. The enemy ships appeared in waves, their dark hulls seeming to absorb light. Their formation was perfect, their technology standardized just like the Concordats had been. They had expected this invasion to be easy, had designed their weapons to counter the most advanced technology in the galaxy. They weren't prepared for humanity's old solutions. All ships, execute battle plan Thermopylae, Sarah ordered, naming the strategy after an ancient human battle. The fleet split into predetermined groups, creating layers of defense that would force the aliens to face multiple types of weapons simultaneously. The alien fleet opened fire, their particle beams lancing out toward the defenders. But this time, there was no easy victory. Physical armor absorbed hits that would have destroyed shielded ships. Hybrid vessels used their energy shields to deflect conventional weapons, while relying on armor to stop the phase beams. Return fire, Sarah commanded. All weapons, all ships. The combined fleet responded with everything they had. Railguns fired massive projectiles at relativistic speeds. Converted mining ships launched clouds of magnetized debris that played havoc with alien sensors. Even the energy weapons, used strategically now rather than relied upon exclusively, found targets among enemies focused on defending against physical attacks. The alien formation began to break apart as they faced weapons and tactics their standardized systems couldn't counter effectively. A Concordat cruiser, its newly installed railguns gleaming, landed a devastating blow on an alien flagship. Independent colony ships darted between larger vessels, their point defense guns clearing paths through enemy fighter screens. They're trying to regroup, Marcus reported. Standard pattern Alpha. No, wait. He looked up from his display. Their formations are changing. They're adapting. Too late, Sarah said grimly. All ships execute contingency plan Delta. This was the strategy they'd prepared for. The moment when the aliens would try to adapt to their hybrid tactics. But humanity had learned long ago that the best defense wasn't a single perfect solution, but rather multiple layers of effective ones. The fleet's formation shifted again. Ships that had been firing kinetic weapons switched to energy attacks. Vessels that had been relying on armor activated their shields. Every time the aliens adapted to one approach, the defenders switched to another. Like fighting shadows with a flashlight, Sarah murmured, remembering her father's words about the importance of tactical flexibility. The battle raged for hours. Ships were lost on both sides, but for every defender that fell, they took multiple alien vessels with them. The combined fleet's diversity proved to be its greatest strength. There was no single weakness for the enemy to exploit, no standard technology to counter. Alien fleet is breaking up, Marcus announced finally. Their formation is collapsing. They're retreating. Cheers erupted across the communication channels as ship after ship confirmed the enemy's withdrawal. The alien fleet, so confident in their ability to counter standard Concordat technology, had been defeated by humanity's stubborn insistence on maintaining its technological heritage. Hours later, in the aftermath of victory, Sarah stood in the Arcturus Prime Council chamber. The Concordat High Commissioner addressed the assembled commanders, his crystalline form glowing with emotional energy. Today marks not just a military victory, but a philosophical one as well, he declared. We had convinced ourselves that progress meant standardization, that civilization meant abandoning the tools of our past. Humanity showed us the error in that thinking. Sarah listened as the commissioner announced the permanent repeal of the Technology Regulation Board's restrictions. The Concordat would maintain its advanced technology, but would also preserve and develop older systems. Never again would they make themselves vulnerable by relying on a single approach. The galaxy is vast, Sarah added when it was her turn to speak, and it's filled with surprises. The only way to survive is to be ready for anything. Sometimes that means using the most advanced technology available. And sometimes, she smiled, thinking of the Defiant's scared armor and reliable railguns. Sometimes it means remembering that the old ways worked for a reason. As she returned to her ship, Sarah thought about how the invasion had changed not just military doctrine, but the very way the galaxy's civilizations thought about progress. The Concordat had learned that true advancement wasn't about abandoning the past, but about building upon it, maintaining diversity not just in biology and culture, but in technology as well. The Defiant's primitive weapons had helped save the galaxy, but more importantly, humanity's approach to technology. The understanding that no single solution was perfect, that maintaining multiple options was always safer than relying on a single approach, had given civilization a new way forward. In the end, humanity's greatest contribution hadn't been their old weapons or battle tactics. It had been their stubborn insistence that progress didn't mean forgetting the lessons of the past. Sometimes, the old ways weren't just alternatives. They were essential to survival itself. As the Defiant prepared to depart Arcturus Prime, now officially recognized as both a Concordat warship and a monument to technological diversity, Sarah Chen smiled. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. In a universe full of surprises, the best defense wasn't a single perfect shield, but rather the wisdom to maintain every tool that worked, no matter how simple or complex. The old ways, it turned out, still had plenty to teach the future.